So as a veteran of global brand strategy and storytelling, she has shaped narratives for industry giants like Nike and Adidas and Micron Technology. With nearly 2 decades of experience, she's led transformational campaigns from launching Nike's Run Club to managing $10 million of advertising programs that achieve 75% conversion rates.
Sure. When I think about branding, I think about what is the platform and what is the foundation that you are building your products or your company on. So what is that vision? Who are you and what do you stand for? And then the marketing piece is how do we activate and use those levers to drive growth. So they're very much, I think you have to have them tied together. And if you can't have them tied together, then your marketing is just
flat.
It's just marketing. Yeah. It's not really connecting with your audience.
Yeah.
When I think about the branding component of it, a lot of people think of it as, oh, it's just a logo or it's just a colorway, but it's more in depth than that. It's really understanding who you are and setting that vision and that foundation for what you're doing and understanding who you talk to and what matters to them and what problems you're going to solve for that audience that you might have.
You've worked on such a large scale, right? I think a lot of times people come to like people like us, strategists, and they say, hey, like I want something simple like Nike, right? The number, like everybody knows the swoosh, right? Like I just want something simple like Nike that everyone can remember, right? But there's so many more pieces to it. And so can you speak to that a little? Like, because you've been on that side, like you talked about them being connected. How are those pieces connected? And you talk about why the simple works because it's connected to those other pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, for some people, they do look at that swoosh and they're like, it's really easy. Can I just get that? But there was a lot more put into building the brand when they started when they built Nike. And that was the foundation of understanding who they really were and who they were talking to and what problem they were trying to solve for their audience. In the case of Nike, it was making sure that they got great running shoes. And one of the things that they did when they were building the brand is, we had Bill Bowerman that was down in U of O, and he would work with the runners there and ask them about what they needed in their footwear. He would literally, there was a program where he would pull people off of lane 8. So you never wanted to run in lane 8 because it was the outside lane on the track. And Bill Bowerman would watch you run and would pull you off the track and then start asking you about your shoes and, innovating and really getting into the mindset of the athlete. So when we think about branding, it's not as simple as just understanding, like, here's a simple logo, we go for it. It's really around building that foundation and setting a vision for who you are as a company and who you want to, what your story is and what your narrative is and how you want to connect with your audience. What problem are you going to solve for them? How are you emotionally going to connect with them?
Very good. I mean, when I try to explain it to candidates, when I talk about the branding piece, it's like that long-term identity. It is that foundation. Yes. And then the marketing is, how do you sell that? How do you connect it to the consumer or the voter? Like, how do you get them to yes, whether I'm going to buy your product or whether I'm going to vote for you? Is that a great analogy? It's really simplified.
I think that's a perfect analogy. And when I talk to people about brand platforms and I talk about that positioning statement, it's encompassing everything. It's the values that you hold and what's important to you as a company before you start really crafting that that campaign that goes out. Your foundation shouldn't shift. It should be really solid. A brand can evolve. And this is what I talked about with a lot of the Nike Skims launch is I understand a brand can evolve, but your values and your foundation will always stay consistent.
Okay.
And that's really what your brand foundation should be. It's very clear articulation of who you are, your vision, what matters to you, and then understanding how you connect with your audience.
And I think this is something so huge for candidates and for your entrepreneurs, like finding this balance between, yes, here are the things I'm passionate about. Like he was passionate about making and innovating these shoes, right? But also here are the things that these runners need. when you're working on a campaign or working with your entrepreneurs, how do you balance those two things? Like, obviously, I'm assuming you're not standing on a track pulling people off of lane 8, right? So how do we do that as strategists, as candidates, as entrepreneurs in a practical way? And how do we balance those two things?
I think the first thing is really going out, and we used to have this saying when I was at Nike that you have to get past the berm to really understand what's happening out in the world. And the berm was, the hill that kind of surrounded campus and enclosed all of us. I say the same thing to anyone that I work with is you have to get out of your own way to go talk to your audience, to understand what matters and what their pain points are. In the case of the nonprofit that I worked with that was focusing on physician recruitment, they were a startup that was focused on revenue driver around, it was going to be a revenue driver for Providence Healthcare, and it was focused on physician recruitment and creating a pipeline for not only their healthcare services, but like-minded healthcare services. A lot of the leadership team that I worked with comes from the nonprofit sector, has not come from the revenue driver part of the business. And so one of the things that I did with them is we first went out and we actually talked to physicians. We talked to them about what matters and perceptions that we had of what did you think about the term nonprofit? What do you think about, working with recruiters? What do you think about this, the state of healthcare today? To really understand what drives them and motivates them. And then we also go and look at what people are talking about online, because I think there is a treasure trove of information that a lot of candidates, if they can't get out and start talking to their constituents, they can get by doing a lot of listening campaigns and going into the social channels to understand what people are talking about, because I think people are going to be way more open on social than they will one-on-one with you. In the case for Providence, it was really eye-opening for them because we sat down and I use the analog of Method Soap a lot. So when I joined the team, they were out marketing saying, hey, we're nonprofit, come work for us. But when you speak to the physicians, they're like, whoa, that's too much administrative work. I got a lot of loans and I got to get paid. Like, how can I still provide care and take care of my patients? But when I'm not getting the support that I need, whether it's electronic medical records, it's, pay, it's too much administrative work. So it was really eye-opening for them. But what I said to them is I use the analogy of Method Soap. So when Method Soap launched, they went into market with this eco-friendly product and they stood in the aisleways of the store and drank the product to show everyone how safe it was. It can clean your house and it's super safe and you can drink it. But what they didn't realize at the time is that a lot of people saw eco-friendly and thought, oh, there's no chemicals, it's not going to clean my product. So they went back and did some market research and they ended up repackaging into something that was a little more appetizing and friendly to their consumer. And they're still eco-friendly. It's just not the lead message anymore. So they're still maintaining what their values and what they want to drive, but they're doing it and packaging it in a way that's great for their consumer. And it's something that can appeal to their consumer. And that's what we did with the startup with healthcare.
Yeah.
In the case of Bowerman, it was a lot of pulling athletes off and asking them about their footwear and what they needed so he could better the product and continue to innovate. Pull out the waffle iron, start to think about, the different treads and stuff that he was giving them and experiment.
There's so many rich nuggets in what you just said because so many candidates that I've worked with and I see, social media listening it's right there in front of you. We're here in Indiana right now and they're talking about redistricting and there's a few ads going around and there was over 1,500 comments. I'm like, that is rich data, just scrape it off and analyze it. So what I get frustrated with, and I don't think candidates do this on purpose, is they put out a logo, they put out a campaign, and they put out their policy positions thinking this is what the voter wants. And because a lot of them are underfunded and under-resourced, they don't have the ability to figure out what the voter wants. But what we're saying is there are ways to find out what your community wants in terms of, social media listening, just having conversations in your community, because when you do it right, and that's what Mandami did. He went around into his community to find out what they needed and what they wanted. He didn't just say, this is what I'm running on. He stepped back and did his homework.
I think that's one of the things I loved about his campaign is he literally went into each community and talked to people
Yeah.
and really understood what their pain points were. And so when he started to develop his policy and his platform, that was all considered. And the interesting thing is there's so many parallels between product marketing and brand marketing and candidate marketing. The difference, though, is this is a very emotional piece. So to really make that one-on-one connection with people to understand what matters most to them is huge, and it's going to really set you off. And then when you start to do the listening, the social listening, the one thing I do encourage is looking at multiple platforms.
Of course.
The funnel is not the same as it used to be. We don't just come in and just get dumped into, a bucket here. It's like playing pinball now, and each channel has its own vibe to it. And you're going to get a differing opinion because the algorithms are all built different.
Different audience.
They're all
yeah.
very different.
Yeah. Now you mentioned the big word in the marketing. The funnel is different because from where I sit, the funnel is super, super important, as you know. But we see with candidates, they go out there, introduce themselves, and in the marketing world, that's awareness. They don't stay long enough in that space. Think of it like a funnel. You've got to tap them, we say 7 to 12 times before they take action. But in the campaign world, they think just showing up and being aware, and then they go right to, okay, now vote for me. They skipped a lot of juicy stuff in between. Explain to the listener when you say funnel. We got to bring them down the funnel. It's the same thing, and I get so pet peeved about it. You can see me just, the smoke's flowing here. But talk about what is that funnel and why is it so important?
Well, the funnel doesn't exist like it used to because I think how we're being served content is not. I get a flyer, I go and I'm like, oh great, that's their position. I go and see a TV ad and then I vote for them. I want to know more about what really matters and that they are hearing what I need and can deliver on that. And I want to see the proof points behind it. We get fed so much information now that you have to be on and in those channels to understand what people are talking about. And it moves quickly. Like it's not like it used to be. Like the attention economy is a very tough economy to be part of. So you could lose top of mind very quickly unless you're engaged. The thing with Mamdani that I really loved about his campaign is he actually built relationships with his community and got them to buy in with what his platform was by understanding what they need and giving them that platform of here's how I'm going to help you. And then he ends up building a community, getting them involved in what he's building, and they further evangelize what he's doing.
Yeah, because in the traditional way is like it used to be like awareness, bring everybody down the funnel. You need to get everybody aware of your brand. Same thing with candidates. And then you had this space they call, consideration. In the campaign world, we call educating. And then that's where some voters, the super engaged voters, will look candidates up, look up a product, do some comparing and contrasting whether I'm going to buy Nike or Adidas for my new running shoes. And then they make that decision to purchase. And then if they really liked the purchase, they're going to go share it with friends. Oh, you need to try this new, X, Y, and Z brand because I love it. And then that creates the loop. But what we're saying now is that funnel is not the same as it used to be because of the attention economy. And we have to really be intentional about how we're trying to get the attention of the voters.
Yeah, I think about, as you're talking about this, I think about when I first entered the consumer goods industry. We would get a creative directive. Here's our big headline for the shoe. We would design a store window, and then you go into the store and you're like, wow, I need running shoes. And then you get that engage copy when you hit the footwear wall of like, okay, these are the different shoes and this is what they all do. And then you buy the shoe and you leave. And it was very much a very simplified funnel. The same with like driving them to Nike.com. You're not going to get a clear journey like that anymore.
Gotcha.
And it's going to be way more. I use the analogy of pinball because that's really what it feels like. You can start out with your message, but it's where does that message live and how is it going to connect with the audience in that channel? And then how do you continue to repeat it over and over again so they get bought into the message that you have? And it's around consistency and building that relationship that you have with them.
Yeah. I love the
Social
analogy.
gives
Yeah.
you a chance to yeah, and it gives you a chance to have a little bit of more of a one-on-one relationship with a lot of your audience too.
Yeah.
Well, and the other
I always
stat that I think we have to keep in mind is that 46% of consumers are watching two things at the same time. Like when they're scrolling on social media, they're also watching TV or they're listening to a podcast or like, so not only are they consuming double the content, but they're paying half as much attention. So I don't know how that even ties into the 7-12 points. You know, like is the other piece of that is, does that count as half of a attention grab? I don't know. So like we're now having to produce so much content and touch so many pieces. Now it's not just a shoe wall, you know? Now it's now we've got to do 24 shoe walls before someone's buying a shoe.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's the key thing. And then I want to quote you here from your article because it was so good, Gina. I really like the high level points. You just
thank
got
you.
it. But when you think about like when we're working with candidates, one thing I like to try to instill in them is you can't just push out content. A lot of candidates do because of low resources, they just push out the content and they use their Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or TikTok or whatever, and they're just using it as a digital billboard. And we've got to flip that up because when you brought in the high level points of what Mandami's campaign, you said here, his branding colors and fonts paid homage to an old Bollywood tiles and classic New York deli. He knew his audience. He had special branding for each of his 5 boroughs. Nailed it, understanding. He's even differentiating. He showed up on TikTok and Instagram daily, sometimes multiple times a day. He finished the primary race with a full day's walk across the city, high-fiving constituent and some of over 50,000 volunteers who canvassed for him. Talk to me about why you felt it so important to highlight those key elements of his campaign and what that represents.
For me, when I look at that, I look at a man that or a campaign that has created an emotional connection with its audience, with their audience. And he really tapped into every neighborhood to not only find out what matters to them, but to deliver creative that would get them excited and built more of an emotional connection with the audience. It wasn't just a flyer that was sent out, and that's great that he's doing these things, but he wanted to go in and understand who he's talking to, what matters to them, and then delivered that creative that really connected. The interesting thing about the amount of content you also have to put out and how much we can talk about, he was great at TikTok. He was really good at the short form video. But he was also really good about going out and actually listening to his constituents and understanding the pain points and what matters to them. And then also respecting where they're from and tapping into that emotional connection and that pride that they have.
Connecting the two together, like connecting those stories and being out with people, and then the short form, like you were talking about, like being out and having those conversations and talking about like all of these issues with those people in a short form content, so much so that you're in Portland raving about him and he's in New York City in a random bodega in Queens and you're talking about that, you know?
Yeah.
It's exciting to see some young, fresh blood hit the scene in the political world. And I feel like we need a lot of that. I look at what's happening now and I think about, because we were talking about how you have to put out a lot of content. I'm seeing certain representatives putting stuff out that feels so stale and outdated. And then I'm seeing people scream, that's all you're going to do. Give us more. Like, do something. It's not talking to anyone. It feels very old school. We're going to check the box. We're going to put out a tweet and we're going to say, oh, this is great, but we need healthcare. What are you doing? What are you actually doing? And Mom Donnie actually went out to talk to people And I think that's a huge step.
Yeah.
Versus he didn't really fall into the establishment.
Yeah. But I think you hit the nail on the head. It goes back to, what are you solving for? A brand, a shoe, going back to the Nike analogy. They were solving for, the pain points of running on a track and how can I make your shoe better? And Mandami's saying, how can I make your life better? And he's really listening to the voters as opposed to some of the folks that's making you cringe right now because they're saying, okay, I need to get on social media. Here I am. But they don't even know why they're on social media. They're just been told to show up there now, right?
They probably just have someone like tweeting out for them.
Yeah,
and it just says, "Oh, great."
And as a viewer, this generation, Josh right here, Gen Z, they're pretty savvy. They see right through that, BS right there. Like, nope, sorry, flip, scroll, done.
I mean, that's what when I jump onto Threads or I jump onto another social channel and I see certain representatives putting stuff out, and then I see what people are saying below.
Yeah.
They're like, "This is all you're going to give us?"
Yeah.
I mean, I know Newsom has, a lot of people that have opinions about Newsom, but at least there's something where it feels like someone's actually fighting for people.
Yep. I hear you.
But I don't know if that's the best example, but his team is doing a bang up job.
Right. It's funny because you, even in the article, and everybody has to go to Gina's Good story and look up her article on the mayoral race, because you also point out here it's not just about going viral, because Ezra Klein, as you pointed, did. He spent his whole podcast just talking about, the brilliance of short form video is the point you're bringing up. It's not just about the video. You clearly state he won because he had the exact right message for his audience and repeated it simply, loudly, and clearly over and over and over again. I'm here in Indiana. Josh is here in Pennsylvania. You're in Portland, Oregon. And all three of us across the country knew exactly what he was fighting for. Childcare, stop the grocery store deserts, housing affordability, rent freeze. We could ramble off what he actually stood for. So that's a successful campaign.
Yeah, what's that quote you have in there that's like something that's so simple a 12-year-old could say it and a 72-year-old could repeat it?
Right.
Like it's like such a line.
It's simple and concise.
Yeah.
And that's something that I try to get in the heads of all of our clients too. It's something that every entrepreneur should be trying to do with their brand, and every candidate should be trying to do with their run. Is what is one simple thing that everyone can know that you stand for?
Exactly. Well,
it was super simple and concise. And we used to have this saying when I was at Nike that sometimes you just need to simplify and go. And that's literally what he did. Is he took his message and he simplified it in a way that's easily to repeat, and it also captures that attention where when someone could be like streaming two different things at the same time, Josh, the message is simple: free buses.
Yeah, you get it.
Right.
More affordable groceries, rent control.
So does that tie into a good candidate branding, as we call the branding package? A good logo. What's your thoughts on candidates having a logo to help identify who they are and what they stand for? Because some do and some don't. And I kind of go back and forth on this one because, we were just looking at how many people of the electric really know what the Secretary of State does, right? You put their name out there, it's, Josh Stanley's running for Secretary of State. Well, what the heck is that? Is it worth it to really take the next step? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's worth it to have a really solid visual direction.
Yeah.
So people can recognize what you're doing. And he did a great job at that. Each of it was tailored, all of his posters and his visual direction was tailored per borough, but it all kind of syncs together. So you had the same feeling, and when you saw it come up, you knew exactly who it was. And I think that candidates need some form of that to understand, so people can recognize them when they start to put out their materials.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I think, and I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this, Gina. I'm not a designer. I work with designers, so I have lots of opinions, but no real expertise. So I'm curious your thoughts on what makes a good versus a bad candidate branding. Obviously New York City's unique in the way you build a brand. He has the 5 boroughs, he had a lot to think through. Shout out to Philly because the agency that built his
Yeah.
brand was out there. That's where we're based out of. But what makes how do you find that balance of building something that is recognizable enough as a candidate, but also you don't have that long to become recognizable? What makes a good brand? What makes a good visual brand as a candidate?
Well, I'm not a designer myself, but from my lens, that I think, and especially with Mandami, his was very eye catching, and I think it also related back to a lot of. I mean, you can make it very layered, and when you think about when you're briefing in your design team of making sure that there are emotional, cultural tie-ins that you can bring into that creative that stops people and makes them want to look a little bit further, or it might relate back to them. That's what I would work with a designer on, kind of building out. I get a lot of, I mean, as we all do, we get the flyers that come in every fall.
Yep.
and they're all
That work really
they're all
good and
bland.
always convert me to the other side.
Right.
Well, because I think about how antiquated a lot of the tactics are. I mean, we have a messaging problem, but also there's a lot of outdated tactics, and we've seen glimmers of hope of getting there.
Yes.
I think you saw a lot of it with Harris's campaign, with Kamala's campaign of getting after that Gen Z consumer. But there is a need, and I can see a place for having some flyers to
Right.
hit that 65 plus
Yeah.
audience. But what about that next generation that's coming in?
Yep.
Like, it's a completely different generation. How they consume media is completely different.
Absolutely.
It's definitely that old politics side of stuff. Mary and I have had lots of conversations about this. It's definitely that old politics side. And I think you're right, Gina. I think Kamala was an interesting case study of both sides of it. Like, I live outside Philly. I live in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So it's a red county. So I had my door knocked on 3 times by Harris volunteers. Okay? That's a lot of times for someone to knock on your door. And that money should have gone somewhere. Like, there's no way that there was a return on 3 door knocks.
Yeah.
You know, maybe one.
Right.
Maybe, in case I was a really old lady, you know? But there's no way that there was a value in that in the way it used to be.
Yeah.
So I think that some of those tactics, like, she had some things, but not other things, you know? And she just had so much money she didn't know what to do with. I don't know.
Okay, go ahead, Gina.
Well,
then
I
I'm
think
going to
the
jump in with my thoughts. Go
I was
ahead.
going to say, when Josh is telling that story, I'm thinking, how do I get them not to knock on my door? Like, do you just put a sign up that said, you already got it, leave me alone? Because I don't want them knocking on my door. But I'm like turning off the porch light. I'm like, no, we're good. Spend it someplace else. But the Democrats, when I looked at that campaign, she had some great things with the campaign, but also we're missing a message within the Democratic Party, and that
She was missing a
we've lost
message.
the voice of
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, in fairness, it wasn't like she was primaried and put out there. It was
She
kind
was
of
not
like,
set up
it
for
was
success.
She was
at
not.
all.
107 days.
No.
Because when she was doing well, her ticker was going up, but then she had to shift to the next phase where normally another candidate would have had months to nail that phase before she shifts. She was just piling through the structural phases of a campaign, lickety split.
Oh yeah, you could see where there was a moment of panic that kind of set in.
Right.
Where they started the messaging that they had, kind of shifted over to court that conservative voter. But even as a whole, like the Democratic Party, like, what do we stand for anymore? And I think we've lost the voice of the working American, like what matters to us.
Right. Yeah. That goes.
And there's a perception that the Democrats are elitist.
Yeah. It goes
which
back to branding.
Probably didn't help when you have.
Right?
Hmm.
It goes back to branding, and it goes
And
back
that
to
foundation.
that foundation. Like the knocking on the doors. If we get back to that analogy, when I was working with candidates here, there was a lot of candidates that ran for a second time, and what they did on their second run, and they were really qualified, excellent candidates that should be representing us in the state house here, and other candidates that I knew that were running. But what's not landing with folks is knocking on the door 3 times. Because remember that conversation, in our conversation, we said in order to get someone to take an action, they have to be triggered 7 to 12 times, right? Before they move down that traditional funnel, regardless of where the signals are coming from. And what's happening is we're still doing it old school way, saying if you knock and make that human connection, they're going to vote for you. But what they're forgetting is in the digital world, they're getting signaled something else. So they're getting contradicted, and then therefore they go back to what's comfortable for them, and they either don't vote for you because you didn't have a big an impact, because the other layers to your campaign wasn't confirming what you did at the door. So that's, I see that what candidates aren't getting is that influx of layering. They think human connection, knocking on door, that's it, and it's not the only thing they have to do. And then on top of that, which we're all signaling saying here, is people have no effing clue what the Democrats stand for right now. So there's no deeper connection of, oh yeah, you're a Democrat. We have candidates here who are afraid to put Democrat on their website. They're using, I'm a Democrat, but I'm going to signal to you I'm a moderate Democrat, so don't put me in that other bucket. So to me, that is not embracing our true identity, because we don't know who they are, and there's too much differentiating. Let's kind of dive into that conversation, because
I think where my brain was kind of going when we were talking about that, when you're launching a product versus a candidate, there are going to be, the muscles are the same, but there's some differences here. So one, they're going out and having to deal with, we don't have a clear message from the Democratic Party, and we need to have a really solid foundation because we don't really know exactly what the Democrats stand for. On the other side, we also have Republicans, and this is what you're going to have to deal with as a candidate that I wouldn't get if I was selling footwear, is they're also creating a narrative about you. And so now we're going into a space where we're thinking about, okay, now we're being attacked for being a Democrat and villainized. And I hate to say this, but the Democrats have done a really good job of really instilling that fear and that misnomer over who we are. A great example is Bernie. I know Bernie's been going out and doing a lot of listening campaigns with people. I saw some stuff that he did in West Virginia where he went out and spoke to constituents that voted for Trump. And a lot of them came back and were like, hey, he's actually talking about things that matter to me.
But because we haven't found a through line for Democrats to unite around, as a result, the Republicans and the MAGA are controlling our narrative. And that's what we're afraid to step into. And because we want to embrace our uniqueness and all the culture variations and the nuances of the Democratic Party, there's no leadership stepping up and trying to find a way for us to create an identity that all candidates can create their uniqueness around and have that foundation to jump off of. That foundation is not there because we're just too busy trying to sell the PDF of policies as opposed to letting people know what we stand for and what we're going to deliver on.
For sure. I think that if the Democratic Party came out tomorrow and said, hope is going to be our core and we're going to build every campaign off of like this one piece, and like I think that would be great and everybody could build, but no, there's never going to be that. But since
No,
19
I would also roll my eyes if they came out with that.
Right. But I was looking at this 1964. We were looking at ads. Mary and I were looking at old presidential ads. 1964. What was it? Lyndon B. Johnson.
Yep.
Let me see. Yeah, 1964. Lyndon B. Johnson ran a presidential ad called Fear, like all about just scaring people. Like Republicans, this is not a new thing. They've always had a central message. They've always been good at that. And there's never been a good central message for Democrats. So I think that the only way, like for our people listening, for our candidates and our entrepreneurs, they have to say, what does our community need? And just solve that problem, because they're not going to get help. And for at least 3 years, there's not going to be a federal level help.
No.
No, and there's no time to waste at this point. What surprises me right now is I'm not seeing more candidates going out and speaking to people, especially in red districts. Like you see Bernie do it, you've seen AOC do it, but like, why aren't we doing more of that? Because people are, unless I'm like only seeing what I see on social. I do live in a bubble. I am in Portland, Oregon. But people are starting to get pissed.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of that comes from the ingrained strategy from the old school way of doing campaigns. So I'll never forget two things I'll share with you. One of the first campaigns, statewide campaigns that I was on, I was meeting the other team's, staff, and I won't name names, but when I was meeting with them, we were just getting breakfast, getting to know each other, one of those meet and greets, and I was dabbling into the conversation about, so how are you folks going to go after and use digital to go after the young voters? We really need to, there's a gap, because I had looked at all the data, the numbers for the state. And I was like, holy cow, look how many young voters are not voting. The other campaign manager of the other campaign shot me a look across the table, because it was a big round table. There's a bunch of other people there saying, why are you going to go after young voters? They're inconsistent voters. Just ignore them and focus on 55 and older. And I was like, bingo, that's the problem, because this is mentality, which parlays into my next thing that I'm saying is just stay, you have limited resources, so just stay with this group and just nurture that group. In the meanwhile, our low voter turnout numbers, we have to reframe our thinking. Low turnout voters are actually low information voters. Go talk to them. Find out what matters to them.
Yeah.
Because you can persuade them. And that's the younger generation. That's the people that are inconsistent. Time and time again, I hear. Now, part of it is resources, but part of it is, no. Just spend your time over here. This is what's going to get you to your win number. And that has been the cycle we've been in. And that's why we have voters not showing up for us, because, like you said, we're not talking to them.
So, the recent Cracker Barrel debacle
Of course.
and the rebrand.
Yeah.
They've seen a decline in their consumer coming into to their stores. It's been on a decline, and part of their reset was because their 65 and plus an older audience doesn't come in like they used to, and they want to appeal to a younger generation. So what I think is kind of ironic about that, it was a very bland rebrand, and then there was all this hubbub behind it, which I think probably in a lot of misinformation and a lot of like pot stirring. But
became political
when they capitulated. And then when they capitulated and said, okay, fine, we're going to put the Cracker Barrel logo back to what it was, I just thought, you're just going back to the way it was, and you're never going to attract that new audience. So
exactly.
It was fun while it
Goodbye, Cracker Barrel.
Right?
Exactly. Like, continue in the decline.
Yep.
Because eventually your 55-year-old an audience is going to age out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So to answer your question,
The reality is those people are going to be dead.
Yeah. And why they're not talking to new people is they're not encouraged. They're not encouraged. New candidates come along, and they're not encouraged. So that's why we need folks like new, younger candidates who were going to be like, yeah, right, why am I going to do that? I'm going to go talk to my peers. And then they're going to talk up and down the voting chain.
There's so much that matters to that Gen Z generation that's coming out. Like, it's going to be, like, I think about AI, for example. They're struggling to find jobs when they're coming out of school. And then you have AI on top of that. And then we have like people in Congress that are like 90 and don't even know how to turn on Facebook.
Nope.
Like, why they need their voice.
Yep.
They need their voice to be heard, not the guy that doesn't even understand what an algorithm is.
Nope. I mean, that's why
it's just terrifying.
The monopoly of Facebook and Google, every time they've called those folks in for a hearing, the questions that they ask is like, seriously? Who was it? I forget which senator. I think it was Zuckerberg. Well, Zuckerberg was on the hot seat, and I think one of the senators, I think it was Kennedy from down Alabama, said, so how do you make your money? He asked him, like, how do you make your money on Facebook?
Yeah, if they don't charge, how do you make money? And he's like, we run ads.
Right, and Zuckerberg kind of...
He's like, what do you mean you run ads?
Yeah, he was trying not to laugh at him, right? Okay.
I think that this technology age has just made the divide between generations so large
Yeah.
that candidates and entrepreneurs struggle when they have to hit different generations. Like, I think for entrepreneurs, it's a little bit easier because it's just like, well, I just am not going to talk to the old people, like, who
Yeah.
cares? Like, I'm not going to sell to them. But it's a little different when it's like, I have these districts I have to talk to. How do I hit these people?
Yep.
And it's like, now I have to figure out how to send a mailer out and not just run a Google ad. And for the older candidates, they're the other way where they're like, oh God, now I have to figure out what ManyChat is and how TikTok works, And so there's this like dichotomy of like whole new things for everyone.
There's a group of there's certain people that have been putting out like TikToks like it's broadcast media, and I think they're missing the point
Totally missing the point.
of how it really works.
Well, say more about that, because I think that's a good way for us to kind of wrap up the conversation, because it's not just about going on social media and putting your messaging out there. Say more.
Well, it goes back to understanding the channel and what the channel represents and what the audience is. So one of the things Mom Donnie did a really good job with is speaking to people in their language. And I'm not just saying like literally speaking in their language, but also speaking the language of the channels. And so when he created a lot of that content, it was right for the platform, and it was right for the people, consuming the media that would want them to continue to see the media. So I think about that a lot when I see now, candidates come out and they just post their like thread or their tweet. What do we call X now? Like, I'm never going to not call it Twitter.
I'm never either. I'm still,
It's stupid.
Yeah. Right.
But they just put it out there. And I think one of the things Trump worked really well with Twitter because he can just sputter off a bunch of bullshit. And it was great in that short form, and people took it and digested it. If you put him with something that's more long form or making some of these like TikToks, I don't think he could ever hit that audience.
No.
I think that Mom Donnie also knew how to speak in person in a different way than he spoke online. Like, I saw him on one of those morning shows, and the way he talked was completely different than I had ever seen him before, because I had always consumed him on Instagram or TikTok, and I'm seeing him talk so slowly and like in a very traditional format, and I'm like, oh, so he just really understands Medium so well.
Right.
Like the way he was eloquent, and not that he's not eloquent in those other spaces, but he understands the medium and how to discuss the same point in different ways for different audiences. And I think that's something that candidates need to either be good at or they need to learn how to be good at.
Well, I think it goes back to like
Agree.
what we're not doing. So the younger generation is being brought up on social media, so they're much more comfortable on there. We need them on there. They're much more comfortable to get in front of camera. And B, this is Josh and I have been talking about this. This is one of the directions we're moving into. But what frustrates me about the way the Democratic training system is set up is we bring in the candidates and train the candidates, and then we expect the candidates to go back and execute on all these elements, and they're drinking from a fire hose. And what is unique about Mandami's campaign, if you look for those who surrounded him, they were all new, fresh ideas and people pushing him in new directions. And look at what, you just mentioned mini chats. Look what Gabriella did with mini chats and presented a proposal on mini chats to get people to donate and get them out of the digital ecosystem and into the campaign. She really said, okay, folks, I see an issue. He's going viral. How do we capture that? So her marketing brain automatically went, oh, they use this app that's an API plugin that goes into your Instagram. We've all done it. Okay, raise your hand if you were on Instagram and you saw a recipe and it said comment banana bread, and you did the comment in the DM, and then they send you the information about, here's your new banana bread recipe. Well, she's like using that same mentality, that same app, saying,
I love that.
Right? She basically got the campaign to use ManyChats to say, hey, you want to volunteer? Put your borough here and we'll send you where to volunteer this weekend based on boroughs. You want to donate? Here's the donate page. So she was able to not only funnel people off, she was able in a campaign world to capture their critical information.
Well, and going back to something you said, Mary, right at the beginning, is people constantly saying we just need to do what we did in 2008, right? We just need to do what we did in 2008. And we're talking about, like, I'm Gen Z, I have a household, I'm married, I have a kid. I have never owned a house phone.
Landline.
I've never had cable, landline, whatever you call it. I don't even know. You know, like... We
Jane and I
have
are
never
laughing.
had
Gen X is here.
we have never had those things, you know? And so
I was so excited when my parents put a landline in my bedroom.
Exactly. You didn't have to, and you didn't have, and when your boyfriend called, you had to kind of wait till they hung up downstairs before you could is anybody on the other line? And you want to have a conversation?
And then you just sit there, twirl the cord as you're talking to people.
Yes. And then the cord would go all through the house. Josh is like laughing at us. The cord would go all through the house and your sister used the phone. So then you followed the cord. Like, where did she take the phone?
I mean,
Josh,
I had one growing up,
Right.
but I've never had one myself.
You've never had one. You're in your house. There's no reason to.
No reason to.
There's no reason to, but that's how surveys happened. That's how we campaigned in 2008, was cable and cold calling and door to door and yard signs. Those were the biggest campaign pieces.
Yep.
And that cannot be what we're doing now because it doesn't work anymore.
Nope.
No, but there's a way, I think, I mean, when you tap into that generation, you got to figure out how to tap into that generation a lot differently than you tap into like a me, for example.
I didn't ask this question, but we've already laid out how it is a process. It has its nuances and idiosyncrasies about creating a branding identity for a candidate. What are your thoughts about you seeing these? Because there's this push and pull happening where it's very expensive and it's high dollars to kind of get this whole package. Will you see these online, plug and play branding kits for candidates? What are your thoughts on that? How does that, I see you're smirking, so I definitely want to know your thoughts on that. Yeah, right?
Well, does that, when you start to do the plug and play, or how are you differentiating yourself then?
Exactly. You're just red, white, and blue because you're just, yeah.
Anything that says plug and play is...
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, also, what are they getting as a cut from that? Because there's got to be a way to do it and save some money and do it in a more efficient way.
Exactly. I think I think the other thing is we need to support and fund our candidates, and I want to stop calling them down ballot candidates because we just think that when you come off the state level, federal level, we'll call them down ballots, and I'm like, I think we need that in of itself. Saying that they're down kind of denotes that they're not as important, but I think we need to own that we need to, in terms of your investment, if you're running for office, there needs to be investment in this launch strategy, and part of that is in branding because that sets you up for success down the road. And that really has to be something you think about when you're running for office.
I think even this conversation helping people understand that branding isn't just like the logo, because that positioning statement, the number of times that I've had this conversation of setting your positioning and your brand kit at the beginning will save you so much down the line because you'll have your messaging and your brand to pull from for everything. It's just so worth it down the line.
Well, it helps you brief in everything that you're going to do. So it's all consistent.
Yep, absolutely.
And now is kind of the time if they're looking at start to run, what would that be, the first part of the year? When a lot of people start to make that decision, now is the time to start really thinking about what that is.
Absolutely.